Hi friends, I'm Michael Levine, and we're going to go on a journey today that is for me a bit intimidating, which I'll explain in a minute. Welcome to Without Notes, a show that I think is properly described by its title. It has no agenda, no notes. Our guest, our partner for the expedition today is Lawrence Grobel. Now, we've been doing this show now, I believe, for 9 years. And we've interviewed some very famous and interesting people. But why am I intimidated today? Because Lawrence Grobel may be considered one of the greatest interviewers of the last 50 years. He did many of the Playboy interviews, the most famous Playboy interviews, for over 2 decades. So the thought that I am going to interview Lawrence Grobel is, well, intimidating, perhaps arrogant. I'm not quite sure. But anyway, welcome, Larry.
Well, it's nice to see you, Michael. Thank you very much. But it's been 4 decades that I did for Playboy, actually.
It was 4 decades?
Yeah.
Now, that
started in '76 with Barbra Streisand.
Your first interview for Playboy was with Barbra Streisand?
The first one that was published, however, was with Henry Winkler right before, because Streisand took me almost a year, of dealing with her and getting it done. So in that period of time, I got another assignment to do Henry Winkler, and he was at the top of his fond stuff.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Now look, let's start in the beginning, because people will be fascinated to know more about you. Let's start with where you were born and a little bit about how you became who you are. So where were you born?
Well, I was born in Brooklyn, and in New York, Bensonhurst, and 8301 Bay Parkway, and the phone number was Bensonhurst 67114. Why I can still remember that, I don't know.
And you also remember the code, right? Bensonhurst.
Yeah, BE, right,
yeah.
Bensonhurst. And and I was there till I was 9 and a half, and so grew up in the streets, playing stickball and what have you, and
which was totally common at the time.
Yeah, and taking firecrackers, ash cans, putting an ash can over it, running away as it blew up and lit up a whole side of a building. Getting caught once in a while, it was play. It was.
So the first
Brooklyn.
9 years were in Brooklyn,
right? And then
was the home that, if I had visited that home and seen you there, would it have appeared to have been a middle class home?
It was an apartment. It was on the 6th floor of an apartment. When Howdy Doody came on, my mother would open the window and scream out, "It's Howdy Doody time!" And I go running sometimes up the stairs, 6 floors, if I couldn't get the thing.
Howdy Doody was
Howdy Doody was, well, people knew. There was Captain Kangaroo, there's Howdy Doody, there was Jerry Mahoney, there's all kinds of Twinkie.
These are TV
shows.
Iconic television shows of the 50s and 60s.
Well, Howdy Doody still is around in certain ways. Andy Warhol put him in the 10 myths of his prints, and so you'll still see Howdy Doody.
So was
around.
the home was a lower middle class? Lower middle class home.
Yeah.
Parents
I shared a room with my sister. There were only 2 bedrooms and then a living room. And so my parents,
you and your sister, you were the older?
No, she was older, 2 years older.
And you shared a room,
until I was 9, until she was 11.
Yep.
And then we moved in.
What did your parents do?
My father was in the pharmaceutical business, so he, dealt with products, and he became
pharmaceutical sales.
Well, he was a sales manager. And then he became a vice president of a company, and so it was a grind, though. I mean, he would come home sometimes with presents. What would he have? A Polaroid camera that hadn't yet come out yet, or just came out. Because his men sold the most things, he got the prize. It was that. It would be a knife, a hunting knife. Dad, let me have that knife. You can't have it. You're too young. I fought for it, but. So yeah, he would come in with that stuff. But he always came home after 7 o'clock at night on the Long Island Expressway.
With an hour commute.
Probably an hour at least.
Each way.
Yes.
2 hours.
Right, and it taught me a lot. It taught me not to want to do that because he came home. Let's have a catch, Dad. Let's play, Dad. He says, oh, I'm really tired. And we sit down, watch TV, whatever. We had catches on the weekends, But but I had a friend, Paul Singer, and he had a father named Arthur Singer, and Arthur Singer was a very famous bird artist. Matter of fact, probably at least equal to Roger Tory Peterson, but I think even better. I think he was considered better. He did the encyclopedia, Collier's encyclopedia, or World Book encyclopedia, excuse me. All the birds in there are his. He did the first stamps. The first time the U.S. Post Office ever did 50 stamps on one sheet, different, with the birds of the United States. He did it. I watched him do it. I'd go to the house.
But the point here about your dad is in early fundamental formational years, you watched your dad and you said,
well, that's why I was making.
I don't think I want to do that.
But that's the comparison I was trying to make with Arthur Singer, because I went to his house and I saw my friend's father smoking a pipe and going to the Metropolitan Museum and getting back, Museum of Natural History, bringing back birds that you weren't allowed out. They let him have it. And then he'd go to Africa to take pictures and come back.
So that life appealed
that
to you.
appealed to me. I said a freelance life. Now, I didn't have the talent to draw. I didn't have musical talent. I tried, played piano for a little bit. But writing always appealed to me. Very young age. I started reading stuff that,
So
that
let's
got to
go
me.
now for at 9. We're in Bensonhurst.
Right, and then we go to Jericho, Long Island.
Why?
My parents found this place. It was a neighborhood.
But was it a
Birchwood
house?
Park. It was a house.
So they bought a house. Your father
Right.
progressed, his career progressed.
Quarter of acre of land.
Bought a house. You remember the price of the house?
$23,900.
Yeah, which
$23,900.
right, which was a
Yeah.
fortune.
And there were 7 models in the neighborhood.
What year?
1956. There were 7 models in the neighborhood, and each one, the most expensive one, was $30,000. So
Oh,
there's
no,
only
no,
$7,000 more. Why didn't you go to that one, Dad?
No.
Well, because we were lucky to get
Lucky
$23,900,
to
and the
get-
friends I had had $21,900. So those were those houses. But they were beautiful houses. I had my own bedroom. My sister had her own bedroom. We had an upstairs, downstairs den.
At age 9, you get your own bedroom. This
Yeah.
is a fantasy.
Oh, it was great.
Great.
It was
Okay.
great. And
So then you go to high school where?
right. Jericho High School.
Okay.
Jericho High School right now is rated in the U.S. News and World Report puts it in the top 5 high schools in the country.
Yes.
But-
Noting our education system in America, I'm not sure that's a great
That's true.
compliment.
But it was a very good
But
school. Even when
independent-
we were there, some of the people in my class did very well. Arthur Kaminsky, who became the.
Were you a good student?
Yeah, I was a pretty good student. I was not good in language. So my French grade, my Spanish grade, well, I didn't take Spanish at college, I had to do it, but my French grade was always just barely passing.
And were your parents of the mind that you better do well in school because... No, they were not.
My parents left us alone. That's what's
That
amazing.
is so interesting.
Because they weren't big readers. We didn't have a lot of books. One time I found in my father's drawer Henry Miller's Tropic of Cancer. I said, well, he's reading a dirty book, great. So I would say, but other than that, they never really, they didn't have artistic sensibilities.
They wanted you to get a job, get married, and...
They didn't even say that. There
was a conformity of that age.
Even going to school. When I finally got to go to college, all right, an example, a very important part of my life. When I was 15 years old, Newsday did an American history essay contest. Newsday was the newspaper on Long Island, still there. And every high school student, it was open to everybody in high school. I write in the first contest, America's 3 greatest presidents. Okay, so I think about it. And I think, well, who would be America's 3 greatest presidents? And in my mind, it came to Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, and then I thought Franklin Roosevelt. But
You
then
didn't have George Washington?
I think he was a great president too. I think.
Good to know.
Yeah.
I'm just...
No. There's a lot of. You could go Andrew Jackson.
He used
you can
to
go
be in all
anyway.
the
You can
papers,
you
by
can
the way.
You can go in a lot of ways you can, but you can't avoid Lincoln, right? That's definitely, and more books have ever been written about him than anyone. But the third one was the tough one. So I thought about Roosevelt because of what I knew about more modern history. But then I read that 1 out of 3 people hated Roosevelt. The judges on the Newsday contest were going to be from
And
Hofstra College,
there were three
two
judges.
colleges, and one newspaper. I said 3 judges. One of those is going to hate Roosevelt.
Right.
Take him out of. So I came up with Woodrow Wilson. I would not do that today. I'm sorry, but at that time I did.
I wouldn't have advised you.
The
to do
essay
it.
was 600 words. So I figured an introduction could be 150 words and 100 and 200 words for each one, whatever it would be for each one, and I tried to make it even. And I wrote it.
And there was no AI. You
No,
couldn't. You had to
no
do.
AI. I didn't type. But then after I finished it, my mother saw it. I said, I'm not gonna enter it. She says, why not? I said, everybody is typewriting this, these things. This is handwritten, and the deadline was that day, and I didn't know how to typewrite. I didn't even have one. So my mother said, I was going out with my girlfriend to the movie that night, but my mother had to drive us. My mother said to me, I'm not taking you. I said, what are you talking about? She says, unless you mail that essay, I'm not going to take you. You wrote it, mail it. I was embarrassed about it. I said, no, let me read it. Okay, my handwriting. I sent it in. I win. I win this contest. My parents are visiting relatives in Florida. I'm alone in the house. I get this call from Newsday. They want to send a photographer. It's nighttime to take a picture. It's going to be in the paper the next day. So I call up my friend's parents. I said, they're going to send a photographer. You think it's okay? They said, well, then, it sounded legit. So they said, okay. So the guy came. And the next day, the essay's there, the paper. They give me a watch. And I still have this watch engraved, and I pick a picture of me with the girl who won it on my side. We're supposed to meet President Kennedy. This is what, we were going to Washington at the end of the year. There was going to be 8 contests, 16 students. So I'm the first winner, so I get to watch all the others, who they're going to be. And I said, this person I want to get to know. This person sounds interesting. And they became friends. So we get to Washington in June, and Kennedy is in Berlin, doing that Ich bin ein Berliner speech. So we're not going to meet him. But they arranged for us to go to the Attorney General's office, Bobby Kennedy. We go in to see Bobby Kennedy. Now, we were told that Bobby Kennedy, if they're around, he's around smart students. He likes to ask questions. So be prepared. So we're sitting there, okay. And I'm thinking, I'm going to ask him something. We're standing there around his desk. I'm as close to him as you. And I said to him, Mr. Attorney General, it's something I knew was going on in the country. And he looked at me and he starts to answer it. And as he's answering it, you have to understand his office, he had a sailfish, this giant on the wall. He had a stuffed tiger. He had a stuffed bear. And as I'm talking to him, my hand is down. I'm standing there, and the stuffed bear licks my hand. And I realized that's not a bear, right? That's his dog. It looked like a bear because everything else is stuffed all around, right? And I just couldn't believe that moment, So anyway, when we finish, he gives me a PT 109 tie clip and a pin. PT 109. PT 109 was
PT 109.
PT 109 was the name of the boat that John Kennedy was in. And that went down, and he did some heroics and stuff. So,
iconic.
Yeah, so they had that when
was
he was running for president. Yeah. Yes. So and that was, I met Senator Javits at the time. It was a very big thing to have won that contest, to get to be announced over the PA in high school.
So now, how do you get to Playboy?
What I do is, after doing a number of different interviews for Long Island, I did Warren Beatty, Lucille Ball, Carol Burnett, Ray Bradbury, Linus Pauling, Henry Moore. I went to, I did all these people. And what I always kept thinking about was, wouldn't it be interesting if I could go a little deeper? I was getting 2 or 3 hours with them. And I kept thinking, I only needed to write 30 or so questions, to prepare. Yeah. But what if I could have a week with you, a month? I thought about it. It's permission. We go through life meeting people all the time. We don't get too far into their lives. How are you? The weather's great.
It's a cursory.
But this Playboy was the only place that was giving me 9,000 word, 12,000 word, 25,000 word interviews. Mine with Streisand was 30,000 words. And so it was giving you a much more in-depth thing. I had read Allen Ginsberg's interview in Playboy one. I remember saying, wow, that was really, how can I talk to that at that level? I think I can, but I don't know until I
But
do
you
it.
can't do it at 3,500 words. You have
Right.
to do okay.
So
how do you get to Playboy?
So this is my thought. I said the minute I thought I wanted to do it for Playboy, it was the only one that let me do it. How do I get into Playboy?
Correct.
There's only 12 issues a year. They've already got their people, their interviewers. They got 3, 4, 5 interviewers. They're out there doing it. Well, how am I going to break that? So I think about it, and I said, I call up Newsday, my editor. I said, hey, how about interviewing Hugh Hefner? Oh yeah, that's a good idea. I said, great. Now I'm going to interview
Hugh Hefner.
And once I'm going to do Hefner, I also figure I got to do a really good job. I'm not going to do a puff piece. I'm going to show him I can do an in-depth interview with him, and maybe that will. So I do that, and I went to see him. He said he's going to give me an hour. I spent 7 hours with him that day, and I went back the next day. So I spent another couple hours. He took me up into his bedroom. He showed me his circular bed. The woolly monkey grabbed me by the ankle. I mean, I had adventures there. but in the end, the interview was solid. And that year, every year, Hefner would give, in Century City, had the Playboy Club, and they had, I don't know how many people get there, but I was told 1,000, but I don't know how many can actually fit into that place. The advertisers would come once a year for a lunch. Every year, Hefner spoke at the lunch. This year, the article I did with him, I get a call from the publicist, Don Rogers, and he says to me, Larry, he says, Hefner is not going to appear at the luncheon this year. He said, instead, he asked us to print 1,000 copies of the interview you did with him, and he's handing that out as his statement for who he is. I said, really? That's amazing. He says, would you like to go to it? I said, well, he says, Arthur Kretschmer will be there. He's the editorial director of Playboy. I said, I'll be there. Thank you very much. I go to this thing, and sure enough, there's all these people, blah, 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 and I'm sitting in a little booth, and I remember, but I brought with me a portfolio of all the articles I had been doing with Lucille Ball and all these people, and, picture this, I had it all laid out, but I don't know how to get to Kretschmer. Don Rogers, this publicist, was nice enough to go over to Kretschmer and says, I think you might want to meet Larry Grobel. He's the one who did the interview with Hef. Oh yeah, I'll meet him. He comes over, he sits down. I said, Mr. Kretschmer, I said, this is what I do. And I'm showing him just like this. I said, this is what I do. I said, how can I do it for Playboy? I said, I know I can, I mean, this is a shot in the dark. So he says to me, why don't you call Barry Golson in Chicago? He's the one who's in charge of the Playboy interview. I said, thank you, but that's all I needed. I call up, as soon as I got back, left this lunch and I called Chicago. Barry Golson, they said, who's calling? I said, Arthur Kretschmer told me to call, right? That's what I said. And so, of course, he's taking it. That's his boss. So he takes it. I said, Kretschmer thinks I should be doing interviews for you. So he says to me, well, who are you working on? I said, well, I'm working on this. I had 40 people I was trying to get to, and I'm naming everybody. And he's listening. And I said, and Barbara Streisand. And he said, wait. He says, you're trying to get to Barbara Streisand? I said, yes. He said, well, if you get to Streisand, we're interested. That was the only one. Okay. I said, okay. That's all I needed to hear.
Biggest star in the world.
She was at that time. I don't know. I say she was bigger than Beyonce, but I don't know.
Bigger.
But you have Taylor Swift. Streisand was enormous.
Bigger.
And she was the queen in a way. So she was, to get to Streisand, I'd been trying for Newsday for a year. I couldn't get near her.
And she didn't do interviews.
She didn't do interviews. But now I call up the same publicist, Lee Salters, that I've been trying to get to all this time, and I said, listen,
He was a famous publicist.
Famous publicist like Michael Levine today. And so I said, Playboy just said they're interested in Playboy. I said to him, if she talks to me, I can get the interview into Playboy, which it goes 19 issues. I think 19 countries right now are publishing that. It's 7 million in the United States. Also, a section of it could go into Newsday's LA, our magazine, which is syndicated. That goes to 350 newspapers around the country. I said, she only needs to talk to me to reach the entire world, basically. That was my pitch. We'll get back to you, right? Well, it took months and months and months.
You kept calling?
I called them once a month, yeah. What happened is, New York Magazine published an article by Frank Pearson, who was directing A Star Is Born. He was a writer. He wrote Dog Day Afternoon, so he was directing it, and he had such a problem with Barbara, I guess, that he did it. And Barbara at that time was married to John, not married, but with John Peters, who was a hairdresser,
Former
by a character, right?
hairdresser,
And then he became the head of a
producer.
studio. So he wrote an article, and the title was, on the front of the magazine, "My Battles with John and Barbara." And inside, he writes something about Jason, about this her son. So I forgot what it was, but that just pissed her off. She just,
She had with Elliot Gould.
Elliot Gould had a son with Barbara, yes, Jason. So she was so angry by this that she wanted revenge, and she said, "I'll do the Playboy interview. That's the biggest audience I can reach. I'm going to attack this guy and say my piece, because you can't believe what you read." That was anger. So it was revenge.
So that was what motivated
I
her.
get a call from her people saying, she was making A Star Is Born at the time, and they said, "Can you come to the Todd A.O. studios to meet with Barbara?" I said, "Is this business or pleasure? I mean, I don't know, guys. Should I bring a tape recorder?" "Just come." Boom. That was one of those orders. Huh? Okay. Where is the Todd A.O.? I had to find it. So I go, and I'm sitting there waiting like in a receptionist's office, and I'm waiting there for 15, 20 minutes or whatever, and out comes Barbara in front. But there's a little entourage of 5 or 6 people behind her, and they're all like, dup, 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 and she comes right up to me, and she says, "Why does the press hate me?" It's not, "Hello, Barbara, nice to meet you, I'm Larry," right? It wasn't that. It was, "Why does the press hate me?" And at that moment, Michael, I knew who she was.
Yeah.
My sister.
She was your sister.
The Jewish American
ballsy
princess.
girl.
Yeah, she was like, no, she was my sister squared. Okay,
Yeah,
I mean,
but on steroids.
Yeah, but I said, "Oh, but I understood it. I grew up with it."
Yeah.
So I just said, "You want to know why?" And I start listing off the reasons that I was pissed off. When you make people wait, you can't get to you, this, that, whatever it was. Well, while I'm doing this, I hear a gasp. Not from one person, but from 6 people behind her.
They can't believe it.
Nobody talks to her like this. And she looked at me, and then she said, "All right, come with me." And we go into the thing, and we sit down. There are 2 chairs, big plush red leather chairs in the studio. We're going to watch A Star Is Born. She's going to fiddle with the music, she's thinking, but she was, so we're sitting there, and I'm going, "Oh God, let me like this movie. Let me like this movie." I'm interested. And up it comes, and and at some point she says, "Stop the thing," because she wants to make the sound a little more drums here. I heard her do things that I couldn't hear, but she did. She was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so we watched it, and when the thing is finished, I'm thinking, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? And she turns to me, she goes, "Well," that was all she said. And I just said, "You're going to make a lot of money." It was the right thing to say. Yeah. She said, okay. So now then John Peters comes. He doesn't know I'm there. He doesn't know anything about the fact that she has to see me or whatever. So he comes down the aisle and he sees her talking to a guy. You don't know who the guy is. "What's going on? What's going on?" Like this, And Barbara turns and says, "This is Larry Grobel from Playboy." And he just immediately changed to a different character. Said, "Okay," and he starts to back away. And then Barbara says, "Okay, if you want to do this, call my publicist, and we'll arrange a time." And I said, "No." I said, "Barbara, I've been calling him every month, twice a month, 3 times." I said, I don't want to call him anymore. If you want to talk, give me your phone number, and I'll call you."
Wow.
She looked at me and really thought about it.
Wow.
And then she went over to a desk. There's an 8x11 pad, yellow pad. And she writes her B and the number 274, whatever it was. And she rips that little corner off, and she hands me this little corner of paper, which I still have.
You do?
I can show it to you. Yeah. So she hands me this little corner of paper, and I later, as I talk to her, she explains that anything she touches, anything she signs, anything, people sell it, So, that's why anytime she hired someone to work for her, she told me that she always, whatever the price was, she reduced it by 30% and then said, "This is what I'll pay you." Of course, everybody who was dealt with her knew she probably did that, so they went 60%. But anyway, but this I got this little note. I started to call her. We made arrangements to meet. The first time I meet her, the first day I go into her house on Holman Hills, and I'm handed. She hands me. She comes down the steps and she hands me this paper, you know. She said, just sign this and we'll get going. I look at it, and it's a lawyer's letter. And it says, Dear Barbara. Then I looked at the next page, and it says my name. So in other words, this is my letter to her. And what its letter says is, she'll own the interview, she'll own the tape, she'll own, she has the right to change anything she wants, and she can kill it at the end, whatever. And I'm going to sign this, right? I said, I can't sign this. What do you mean you can't sign it? I said, no, I can't. This you're taking away, you know, you're cutting off my balls here. I said, I'm not a secretary, I'm a writer. She says, everybody signs it. I said, that's why you don't do many interviews. Anyway, it wasn't calm like this. It was anger. It was like, I'm not signing, you're gonna sign it. It was, and we sat there in these two
like
chairs. It was amazing. You know, it's like I hadn't even started and I'm arguing
And
with
you're
her.
under 30.
Yeah, I'm under 30. So she finally goes, okay. She agrees, puts the paper away. And then we sit down, and just about to sit down, the phone rings. And it's her lawyer. Did he sign? She says, no.
Who's the lawyer?
I didn't know who the lawyer was, because this is a three-person story here. The lawyer calls. Did he sign? No. And and he says, well, he should. Well, I said, it's okay. She hangs up. Seconds later, Marty Ehrlichman.
It's the manager.
The manager. Could have been John Peters next. John Peters, did he sign? No. Boom. Third one, Marty Ehrlichman.
Another tough
the manager.
guy.
Yeah. And he says, did he sign? And Barbara by this time is annoyed, right? So she said, here, why don't you talk to him? And she hands the phone to me.
You're talking to Marty Ehrlichman?
I'm not yet, because it's still in her hand. Yeah. And out of the phone comes, I don't want to fucking talk to him. She had handed me the phone, and I heard this. I never said a word. I said, you don't want to talk to me? I gave it back to Barbara. Barbara says, I'll talk to you later. Boom, hangs up. And that's it. We start. We sit by the fireplace. We're sitting on the floor. She asked me for a pen for some reason. I don't know. So I lent her my pen, but then I need my pen to, for my notes. So I said, Barbara, I give my pen back. So she gives me the pen, and she holds it. So now I'm holding her finger for a second, and I'm thinking, what the fuck is going on here, right? Yeah. What game is she playing with me? Yeah. And I'm being careful because I know she's testing me in a lot of different ways here. So anyway, we start, and within a half hour, I'd say, the talk got sexual, about like and she said, and I'm thinking, I have prepared hundreds and hundreds of questions, none about sex. And yet here we are right at the beginning talking about something that was intimate, and the tape recorder's going, and I'm realizing that what is happening is she's made a commitment. Because if we never talked again, if she said, I don't want to, I had something. So she sort of gave me something in a certain way, and it was like, that's how I read it. 6-7 months of this went on. I went to see Barbara 2-3 times a week for 6 or 7 months. Wow. There were times when she called, she wanted out. When John Peters...
I'm not doing this anymore.
John Peters called, wants to meet me. Says, can I talk to you? She had gone to Japan for a while, and then she came back, and for some reason we had some things I did that annoyed her. Obviously, I'm always annoying her about her mother, about this, about whatever we talked about. She'd call me at 2 a.m. John would call me and yell at me. I mean, it was a crazy kind of time. I've written about all this. I'm working on this I keep a journal since all this time. Anyway, so this is what happened.
And then this becomes the first Playboy interview that then leads to 40 years. Name some of the...
Not only was it the first Playboy interview, right. I brought this here because this is a rare copy. This is the first time Barbra Streisand, the first time anybody, a famous person was on the cover of Playboy. This was the interview on the cover. No one's ever done that before. Yep. Since that time, I've had 6 others, but that was the first.
But tell me about, now, this is a 40-year journey.
This led...
Yeah. Give me the names of
what happened after this and the Fonz was Dolly Parton.
Right.
Dolly and I got along terrific.
Right.
I still talk to Dolly. I just talked to her for half an hour on the phone.
Okay.
And this one is with Dolly Parton. And this followed. This was in 1978.
She's as a bunny.
Yeah, the bunny suit, right? Mm-hmm. And Dolly was just so much fun. You know, she was a delight, and she, you know,
Yeah.
and it wasn't
For
fighting.
viewers to fully understand, there is no magazine today
Right.
that has the cultural impact. This magazine was read by on the newsstand by
right.
everyone.
Right. Barbara called it the Bible.
It
Right,
was.
right.
And so there is no reference point to viewers today. It would be like.
Yeah, it's
It would
true.
be like Vanity Fair times 1,000.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so now 40 years on the journey. When do you connect in the journey with Hefner?
Well, what happened is I get a call after the Streisand one comes out, and I get a call from the editor saying, "Are you sitting?" I said, "Yeah, okay. Sit down and think." Because Marlon Brando has agreed to talk, and would you like to do it? Now,
Unbelievable.
Marlon Brando is like
after The Godfather.
Yeah. He was doing Apocalypse Now. So
After The Godfather.
So and after Last Tango in Paris as well. So Brando to me represented what a man was. I was influenced a great deal by On the Waterfront, Streetcar Named Desire.
Sure.
You know, I mean, it was like his early films were unbelievable. But you know, the Wild One, Viva Zapata. I mean, you know, really, his stuff.
The Godfather wasn't bad.
Oh, then when it does The Godfather too. But so the reason I think I got the assignment was because I was still new to Playboy. I'd only done 2 or 3 people.
Yeah.
But they saw that I was willing to spend a year to get the assignment, and I didn't get paid until I finished it. So they didn't, you know, they never had their other writers. They couldn't give them a year-long assignment, but with me they could do it, and they saw that I was persistent
And earnest and persistent.
right. And I think I was good. I think what happened too was with the funds very early. When
Henry
Winkler, I did that. I had a certain way of doing it so that it would end with him at the Mardi Gras, king of the Mardi Gras, throwing this thing. So after you hear his life story and how he did this, now he's king of the Mardi Gras, he's throwing the balloons. They cut it out. The Playboy took it out because of space. So I called up the editor. I was arguing with him right at the start of my career. I said, "You can't do this. Don't you see?" I said, "Look, from here it goes to here, here goes to here."
And strangely, they may have admired that.
They did.
Yes.
Thank goodness.
They
Because
didn't like it,
they didn't see,
but they may have admired
because they
it.
didn't understand what I was doing. And then they saw that I saw this. I saw an interview with Playboy as a 3-act play, and that's how I
Larry,
structured it.
there are hundreds of life lessons in what you've already said. Hundreds of them about audacity, about all these things. Many of them not as common today as well, they weren't common in any day, but they certainly are not common today. Now, you do Marlon Brando. You do that interview.
And Brando is the one. Brando changes. Streisand changed a lot. That got me to Brando.
You got
Brando, I get a call. I'm doing Steve Martin for Playboy or something, and when he was doing The Jerk. And I get another call. We got Al Pacino. He's never done an interview.
Now, let's remember the timing here.
Yeah.
Al Pacino had just done The Godfather.
Godfather? Well,
The Godfather rocketed him in a way that is hard to believe by today's standards.
Right.
Al Pacino becomes the biggest star in the world.
And he's never done an interview.
Right.
He's never done it. So he's making this movie Cruising. He's working on it, but he just finished And Justice for All, I think it was. And so
I'm out of order.
I'm out of order.
You're out of order. This court's out of order. Right?
Great movie. So what happens is they said, Pacino said he'll do it, but he wants to see you on Thursday. This is Tuesday. I said, and I'm also seeing Steve or something. Well, you know, he's pretty big too at the time, right? So
Al Pacino,
so
son.
I said, I can't do it on Thursday. I can't do it on Thursday. What do you mean? I said, well, because the library, the Academy Library, where I do my research, that there's no internet then, is closed on Wednesdays. So I can't even do it. Today is Tuesday. I have to leave on Thursday. And I have to actually leave on Wednesday when you think of it. So they said, you don't
Where do you...
I'm here in L.A.
And where is he?
He's in New York.
Pacino's in New York.
So that's when he tells me, he says, well, you don't understand. He said he'll only do it with the guy who did Brando. He had read the Marlon Brando interview I did and said, I'll do it if it's him.
Guy
that's who I became. You don't have to know my name, and it's an anonymous form. But I was the guy who did Brando. I was going to do a book called The Guy Who Did Brando.
And now you did Pacino.
Right. And I got to do Pacino, and everybody wanted to talk to me after Brando. Everybody, even if he said nasty things about you, like Lily Tomlin, he said some things about her or whatever. They all wanted to talk to me. Streisand, I meet her at Elliot Gould's house one day, a couple of, after I'd done this.
It didn't matter.
She, in the kitchen, she wants to talk about Marlon. We just sat in the kitchen and talked about all the people in the party are in the other place.
But when you do your interview, what year is the Pacino interview?
1980.
1980.
1 year.
Now, something odd happens in that story, in that
we become
you
friends.
become friends.
Yeah.
And then best friends.
Yeah.
For decades.
For decades, yes.
Al Pacino.
Yeah, but Al Pacino has been here, sitting here, eating our food. He grew up. My kids only grew up with him. They weren't even born.
Hold on. I'm sitting at a table Al Pacino sat at?
And played cards at. Matter of fact, that might have been his chair.
Wow. That's impressive. Okay. So you developed this friendship with the biggest star in the world.
Right.
And it's rooted really in friendship. It's not what's the term? Starfucker?
I'm not fawning over him, and I'm not a sycophant, I hope. I'm just, it's just that it was for some reason we both clicked. We understood each other. Mm-hmm. He was from the Bronx. I was from Brooklyn.
Right.
I go to see him the first time, and he's got a small apartment, has Candace Bergen on the name, not his own name. She used to have it before in Manhattan. And I go to sit down in a wicker chair, and he's on a couch, and the wicker chair, my ass goes right through it. Because it's broken, and I know it wasn't me. I mean, I may be a little heavy, but I don't break chairs. Anyway, so I laughed. And then he had a yogurt.
And he doesn't think much of it.
No, he had a yogurt cup on the couch arm. And I had gotten up, and I don't know why, but I looked in the yogurt. It was half eaten. It wasn't even, and it was just sitting there. And then we go in the kitchen. I see some cookies, like Entenmann cookies, whatever they were. So it was on top of the refrigerator, but I reached to have a cookie. What the heck, right? So I took it down, and every cookie was half eaten. It's a bite in each cookie. It wasn't finished. I put it back up there. I didn't say anything. He comes in, he says, "You want some coffee?" I said, "Okay." So he goes to make some coffee, and the dish rag catches fire on the thing. So now he's whipping the dish rag, and I'm standing there, and I'm laughing. I'm saying, "This is like I can relate to this
thing.
This is
a Woody
like,
Allen
yeah,
movie.
This is like me. I'm clumsy. Yeah. I'm this. The yogurt, everything there was funny to me. So I just knew that that our growing up had a similarity. He's 7 years older than I am. Right. So,
but did he have to the extent you knew this? Did he have a consciousness that he was the biggest star in the world?
Well,
or didn't care?
No, because he disguised himself, and we went out a lot, and he would always say,
"You would go out together, and he would disguise himself."
Yeah, well, he'd wear the hat all the way down. He'd put the thing up like this. He says, "Go get the tickets. We're going to go to a movie. Let's say." I'd run out, get the tickets. I'd signal him, and he'd screw him out like that. He would go to Yankee Stadium and put on a beard, a fake beard, and the camera can would go right to him. They all knew it was him. It was the real thing, and then he'd have to leave. He was embarrassed. Yeah. But it's very different. Al was different in that sense because he's not comfortable. Diane Keaton, on the other hand, will walk down the street. She's okay because hi, how you doing? She'll disarm people. Mm-hmm. Some people who don't feel comfortable.
Okay. So now you build this 40-year relationship with Playboy, and then you begin book writing as well.
Right.
When do you start book writing?
1984. Okay. I go to do.
What's your first book?
A Conversation with Capote.
Truman Capote, would you explain to the audience who Truman Capote is?
Well, Truman Capote was kind of like our Oscar Wilde. He was kind of outrageous.
Kind of?
He spoke a little bit with a funny voice. We knew he was gay. He wasn't hiding it. And but he was a brilliant writer.
Brilliant.
He wrote Breakfast at Tiffany's.
In Cold Blood.
In Cold Blood. He made millions on that and all. But he wrote another...
and he would be on The Tonight Show.
Oh, he'd be on old TV shows.
And he was
sometimes
so entertaining.
Yeah, he absolutely was. He was one of the most entertaining people to be
ever.
Yeah, yeah. And he only wrote 6 or 8 books. So he hated people like Jackie Suzanne and Joyce Carol Oates because they were so prolific, you know.
Yeah.
And but he had something to say about every one of them. I interviewed Capote for the Playboy cable, and so I have.
But then
it on
you
tape.
do a book.
Yes, and it's based on. Well, then I do an interview with him for Playboy, and this is. I'll always remember this because I was going out every 6 months. I was going to Sagaponack in Long Island. I flew out, go out, spend 5 hours with Capote, come back. So one time I'm having dinner with Christy Hefner, who's then the head of Playboy or close to it.
That's Hugh Hefner's daughter.
Hugh Hefner's daughter, and Barry Gilson, my editor. And I'm late. I had to get to New York, but I was with Capote for 5 hours. I finally get back 3 or 4 hours later. They said, how's the interview going? I said, it's going to be the most recognized interview of the year. This is what I have never said that about anything I've ever done, including with Bob Knight and Jesse Ventura and all. But this one I just knew was outrageous. So they were excited. When I give it to them, it goes up to management. The managing editor, he has 1 word, 2 words for it, 3 words for it. I'm sorry. I hate it. I hate it.
Wow.
And Kretschmer too thought it was too gay, whatever, whatever. And it was too negative.
It's a different era.
So
it's a different era.
This is what I did immediately, was say, I would like to buy it back. I was this confident in this. I said, I'd like to buy it back. So they allowed me to. So I now had the rights back to this thing.
To do a book.
And I wasn't doing a book then. Yes. No. I said to Capote, do you mind if we continue this? And he said, okay. So I kept going out there. Yes, I had in mind a book. I didn't talk to him about it at that time. I was thinking he was writing Answered Prayers. James Michener told me the book that will be most remembered in the last half of the 20th century is if Truman Capote ever finishes Answered Prayers, that's the book. So I'm thinking, if I could have been with Proust when he was writing Remembrance of Things Past, if I could have been with Joyce when he was writing Ulysses, I'm with Capote. And he's letting me do it. So I don't have an outlet yet. But I have an access, and I just keep spending. I'm willing to go. I'm willing to fly in and do this. And then what happens? He dies at the age of 59 or something. Or he
What did he die of?
Oh, it was a broken heart, I think. But it was something that he took a lot of different pills. I forgot what it was. But I wrote about it.
So that becomes the first book, and now
within
you've written...
6 months, that book is out. After 6 months after he died, it's published. I had to write it and it was the fastest hardback ever published up until that time. Becomes a bestseller on the Village Voice, #1, San Francisco, #1. I mean, really, it was amazing. And so
now you're a book writer.
I'm a book writer now.
How many books have you done?
32.
You've written 32 books.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite book?
Always the one I'm working on, right? But
what book are you working on?
Well, I started to tell you that I've kept a journal that's 10,000 pages long. Everything, all the stories I'm telling you now, I have all the people I've ever been with, hundreds, thousands. I've written about it. And so I have all the dialogue. I have everything, the craziness that happens. Dolly Parton saying things to me, let's go into business together, let's share a room, let's do this. All of this stuff happened. Nobody knows it. No, people are going to be amazed by this, but the fact is, I have it all. I have been reducing 10,000 pages, 5 million words, to 200 or 300 pages. You could imagine how much material I have, and it's amazing.
And this book, ultimately, will be published by...
I hope to find a publisher that's going to see what I see in it, because I think this will get me on every television show. It'll get me on all the podcasts. I'll do an audio book the way Robert Evans did. The Kid Stays in the Picture.
I represented Robert
Did you?
Evans.
Yeah. Well, that's a great audio book.
Oh boy!
And I think I
It's
can
a
do
great
one that's
story.
similar to it. Yes, because
Okay.
of these kinds of stories.
Got it.
The stories with De Niro, with Pacino, with Pavarotti, with Patty Hearst, with George C. Scott. I just wrote this book called Hustle: The Making of a Freelance Writer. What? And it's
That's the questions I'm asking.
and it's all the stories that I've been telling you. The story about how I met my wife. The story about in the beginning, on the airlines. All these articles are in here that influenced my life in some way. The article about America's 3 greatest presidents, I put it in here. But I write about what I did in the beginning and why I'm putting it in here, and then what happened afterwards. So it's one writer's journey into the freelance world, but I was able to do it. And I think other people can take from this that.
Well, if they most remember that the book is called
Hustle.
Hustle,
Right.
and life
Is a hustle.
requires hustle.
Right.
Larry,
You can't be lazy. Even without
You can.
notes. I was going to criticize Michael. This is the truth.
Okay.
I'm sitting here saying, I'm waiting for you to say to me, how do you do what you do? And I was going to say to you, with notes.
Yeah,
And it was going to be a slight criticism of you doing no notes. I said, you're lazy. You're like Larry King. But the fact is, you're able to create a conversation and keep it going for the whole time. So good for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, that is an interesting point. I think there's a misconception about the show in that it is more of a conversation than, in fact, an interview in a traditional way. So you were an outstanding guest. I was intimidated driving here thinking, I'm going to ask Lawrence Grobel, I'm going to interview him. You got to be crazy.
Yeah, people who come feel that way until 5 minutes into my meeting me, and then they go.
No, I felt intimidated the whole way. You were a great guest. Thanks a million.
Sure.